So if someone is going to speak, please come forward and give your name. And
Is there a sign-up sheet?
do we have a sign-up sheet back there? Yep. You weren't ready, huh?
We have an information packet.
Okay. Oh, we got a million.
We've got a list.
If they don't have enough, I can give mine.
Well, hi, I'm Lynette Namba. I live at 2977 Reed Street. I'm part of the Breathe Easy Wheat Ridge Coalition. Thank you so much for having this study session and allowing us to speak on this. Yes. Is it on? Yeah, okay. I hope that you will support the ordinance that has been drafted and several additions that we are proposing. The information packet that we just handed out to you on the first page lists the additions that we would also like included. And I just, a few comments about especially for the smoke-free part. For those concerned about interfering with business, this ordinance does not restrict sales in any way. It only prohibits the use of tobacco and vapor products in public spaces. Again, if you look at the second to last page of the packet, this references the results of a survey that found that more than 20,000 households would be more likely to visit Wheat Ridge bars and restaurants if all patios were smoke-free. Several years ago, I worked for the Los Angeles County Health Department on smoke-free outdoor policies, including parks, farmers markets, outdoor dining, and beaches. I witnessed firsthand a young man confront a woman smoking on the beach, point out the sign which clearly prohibited smoking there, and waited for her to extinguish her cigarette. Underlining that these kind of policies are largely self-enforcing with good signage. Smoke-free policies protect workers, residents, and visitors from breathing in the dangerous chemicals in tobacco smoke, help reduce youth and adult use, do not cause negative economic harm to a community or state, and just make sense because the majority of the population does not smoke. We should all be able to sit on a patio or go to a park and not have to breathe chemicals from a tobacco product or electronic smoking device. And all workers should receive the same protections. The health of a tobacco shop worker is as important as a bartender, office worker, or government employee. They all deserve to breathe air free of the toxins in smoke and aerosol from electronic smoking devices. All of the proposals before you have been adopted by one or more of our neighboring communities, again, referencing the first page of your packet. Let's get ahead of them and take a leadership role in promoting and becoming a healthy destination. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Lynette Nambi.
How you doing tonight? My name is Dan Martinez. I am a sponsor of our local B team, which is at Wheat Ridge High School, which consists of about 10 students who try to do tobacco awareness around school to their fellow peers. I just wanted to share you the impact of smoking and marijuana at the high school level. As a campus supervisor, we check for kids who are smoking, and since they can't smoke on campus, they usually go to other places. So our main place where kids are hanging out is at Discovery Park. And not only do they go down there to skip classes, but it's a big use of cigarettes and marijuana down there. So we've had a lot of contact with kids who are using cigarettes while they're hanging out down there. And it's a big problem as far as, since they can't smoke at the school level, they will move either to Crown Hill or to Discovery Park. And since Discovery Park's opened, we've had a lot more kids hanging out down there. Also, vapor devices, they are not allowed on campus also, but we do see a lot of kids using them nowadays. And they try to use them around school, in their cars, which they're not allowed to do since it's tobacco related. And again, that's taking them off campus into neighborhoods, parks, to use those devices. But other than that, smoking's always been an issue with teens. It's just a matter of where they use it and when they want to use it. And we do a lot of neighborhood patrolling down in the Wheat Ridge area around the high school, and neighbors see a lot of the kids going down there to smoke and hang out. And usually, when kids are hanging out, they're usually smoking, so it kind of brings fold to both sides. So most of the neighbors down there just seem to think that kids are hanging out there to smoke instead of being at school. So I just wanted to give you the light on some of the things we see at the high school level. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. I have a Rachel here. And could the next person be kind of ready for? And I appreciate that you're all staying under 3 minutes. We have quite a few to talk, and that's very appreciated. And we're glad to hear what you have to say as well.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I go to Wheat Ridge High School, and I would just like to I would like to share my perspectives on smoking with my peers and how they use and what would help stop them. So with the parks, they do ditch class and they go down and smoke. And if we had an ordinance that wouldn't let them and was more enforced with more enforced by the people and everything else there, I feel like the kids would, for one, just stay in class more and it would help their health. And with my personal experience, vapor lounges attract the wrong crowd. And the kids at my school who go to vape lounges and hookah lounges aren't the type of kids that are really helping our community. And they're just, I don't know, they're just, I just don't think it would attract great kids into our community. So, yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. Barbara?
I hope I'm standing where you can hear. Is that good? Because I haven't been able to hear these others very well. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm sorry that the marijuana industry picked our fair state of Colorado to be the experiment. Being the lab rats in this experiment is not fun, and there is no doubt that marijuana in its several guises is harmful, especially to innocent, impressionable adolescents and teenagers. There is very little positive benefit in the overall picture, although some claim relief from pain. And we have frequent damage done by drug users. The latest is the Marines being killed in Chattanooga. But it's not just the losers in society that injure themselves this way. A family member of ours reported to me the following tragic statistic. A very bright young man, known to a friend of the family member in this area of Colorado region, full of promise, only a year out of high school, brilliant in high tech, he used pot, as did his parents. And just this month, he was feeling depressed and he hanged himself. A terrible lost mind, another statistic. If we sanction the vaping use, we only encourage the youth to take advantage of such newfound so-called freedom.
Barbara, excuse me, can I get your name, full name and address? Thank you. In the speaker will be fine. Pardon me? Oh, in the microphone.
Do that first. Barbara St. John, 3480 Everett.
Thank you.
Mayor J. Council, my name is Roger Morin, and I live at 3550 Miller Court. I'd like to speak on item number 3. I know a lot of the draft ordinance deals with the getting in compliance with the Colorado Clean Indoor Air Act, and I think that's important and, in a sense, a no-brainer. What I want to talk about is something else, a different angle on it. About a year ago, I learned of Wheat Ridge's Vision 2025, and it's a statement that I can support, and so I'm going to read it. Wheat Ridge is a beautiful city and a community for families. Wheat Ridge has great neighborhoods, vibrant commercial centers, and multimodal transportation, and is committed to environmental stewardship. Wheat Ridge residents enjoy an active, healthy lifestyle and hometown feeling and pride. I think it's a great statement. As a father of 4, a husband, and a son-in-law of 2 very long Wheat Ridge residents, I most identify with the part of this vision that supports families and residents enjoying an active, healthy lifestyle. This is a place I would want to live, and I hope our city still uses something exactly or near to these goals. This vision is why I request that you support a relatively encompassing ordinance for smoke and vapor-free air for Wheat Ridge. A beautiful city with hometown feeling and pride suggests to me an ordinance that supports smoke and vapor-free air in our parks, eating facilities, outdoor patios, public transit, city and community events, and of course those facilities that already prohibit smoking. I also ask that you mandate smoke and vapor-free retail or air for retail tobacco businesses. This seems counterintuitive, but it protects workers and it sends a message that Wheat Ridge will get out in front of those trying to exploit the vaping technology in ways that are counter to the health of its users. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker must be Jim. Your name, sir?
I'm Jim St. John, live at 3480 Everett Street. I would like to see City Council vote in opposition to any and all further applications of use of facilities of any kind of application of marijuana, since the City Council took it upon itself to vote marijuana legal and without allowing the citizens and taxpayers of the city to have the same opportunity. I think that the use that's currently under consideration of vapor utilities is just another addition to the problems that we're going to have from previously approved use of marijuana. I don't think we need it. We're surrounded by communities who have voted against marijuana. That makes Wheat Ridge a city of commerce for marijuana for all of the surrounding communities, and I don't think we need to be in that position. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We have Laurie Odoms and 2 Jennifers.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members. I'm Laurie Odom. I live at 11490 West 38th Avenue in Wheat Ridge. I'm a retired physician and nearly a 40-year resident of Wheat Ridge, and appreciate the opportunity to speak at this study session. There have been several important changes since Wheat Ridge City Council passed a smoke-free parks and recreation areas rule in January of 2013, namely easy availability of new electronic smoking devices, legalization and commercialization of marijuana, and increased smoking and vaping of nicotine and marijuana in Discovery Park. I'm very proud to be a resident of this vibrant community, one that has beautiful new developments and parks and trails that support its increasing focus on health and wellness. In keeping with this focus, I would like to support an ordinance to make all of our parks and recreation areas smoke-free and vapor-free. And I strongly support the ordinance recommendations and modifications made by others this evening. Smoking cigarettes remains the leading cause of preventable illness, disability, and premature deaths in this country. The estimated economic costs attributable to smoking and exposure to tobacco smoke continue to increase and now approach nearly $300 billion annually. 70% of adult smokers started smoking before the age of 18. The developing brain, up to about age 25, is particularly vulnerable to the addictive and detrimental effects of mind-altering drugs such as nicotine and marijuana, regular use of which prevents normal brain development and can be gateways to the use of other drugs. In Colorado, in 2013, marijuana use among 12 to 17-year-olds was 11.2% versus the national average of 7.2%. The use of ESDs by youth nationally tripled from 12-13 to 12-14. ESDs, or electronic smoking devices, have been touted as devices to quit smoking, but so far studies have not proven that efficacy, and they're not approved by the FDA for that purpose. But certainly this ordinance would not prevent their purchase and use for that purpose. ESDs make it possible to discreetly vaporize high concentrations of nicotine and marijuana even during school classes. Moreover, similar to secondhand tobacco smoke, studies are increasingly showing that the aerosol vapors from ESDs not only contain nicotine, but other harmful substances such as formaldehyde, carcinogens, fine and ultrafine particles, etc. High concentrations of marijuana in ESDs have significantly more adverse effects than smoking a joint with a much lower THC concentration in the 60s and 70s. The Lancet Psychiatry journal recently published that teens who smoke marijuana daily are 60% less likely to graduate from high school and college than those who never use marijuana, and 7 times more likely to attempt suicide.
Lori, Dr. Odom, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Yates. I live at 3700 Miller Street. First of all, I'd like to say good evening and thank you to all of you for all that you do. After watching parts of what's gone on in the last year, I really do appreciate what all of you do, both staff and council. So I do appreciate that. So thank you for putting the discussion together about smoking and vaping on the agenda for tonight. I was 8 years old when I took my first drag off of a cigarette. At that time, the smoke and the taste were not appealing to me. If it had been a bubblegum e-juice, though, it might have been. I did, however, start smoking when I was 13. I may be dating myself a bit, but at that point in time, smoking was the norm. It was everywhere. Most of my friends' parents smoked. There were cigarette ads everywhere, and everyone on TV smoked. It was a cool thing to do. If there had been vaping at the time, my friends and I would have been all over that. Now we know better. Nobody can deny that smoking tobacco is dangerous. But what about marijuana and other drugs? All of you know my feelings about marijuana and the fact that vaping can so easily conceal the use of any drug is very concerning to me. And what about e-juice? It's not regulated by anybody for content or the impact on our health. If you're worried about pollution you're breathing, you need to be worried about vaping. Anything. No one knows what is in the aerosol that is being inhaled directly or the plume of vapor in the surrounding air that others may be exposed to. I am very concerned about Wheat Ridge becoming a marijuana vaping destination. With the marijuana industry now promoting marijuana vaping bar ballot measures, we can expect even more association and glamorization of vaporizing, which negatively impacts the health of our community and, most importantly, our kids. Please take the guesswork out of what someone is vaping. Give business owners and law enforcement something substantial to work with. Make the standard smoke-free and vapor-free. I hope you will support a smoke-free, vapor-free ordinance to send a message that smoking and vaping are not and should not be the norm. Please continue to promote Wheat Ridge as a healthy destination. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker?
Jennifer Shepard. I live at 7 Twilight Drive. And my little boy is now 6-year-old. He's a 6-year-old. And last fall, we were playing at Discovery Park, and I've told this story many times. We were playing at the skateboard park, and he said on our way home, "Hey, Mom, I want to smoke when I get older." Again, just concerns me how these little ones and the big ones are so exposed to smoke and vaporizing throughout our community. So we really don't play at Discovery Park all that much anymore. But as we drive around, he still points out the smokers and people using vaporizers at the bus stops, outside the grocery store, outside the rec center. And sadly, this spring, we saw vaping and we smelled pot at the Easter egg hunt at Panorama Park. So here's what we're up against as parents in a community who are concerned about our youth and rely on our youth for our future. We have powerful industries that are in constant need of new and regular users. Our adults and youth receive the message that these products are not harmful. Our youth is additionally lured in by candy-flavored e-juices, Snoop Dogg vaporizers, which you'll see in your packet. And if you go through Colorado Mills, you'll notice at Spencer's and Zumiez that they're promoting the pot culture and lifestyle. And if you put the dots together, you'll see how they're really promoting Bob Marley lifestyle. And as you look further, the Marley family will soon be rolling out their own line of natural cannabis this year. We can and we must send a message of smoke and vape-free health to our youth and community. I recently, just this week, attended the Biennial of Americas, the discussion on global drug policy. And Dr. Nora Volkow, she's the director of the National Institute of Drug Abuse. She spoke about prevention, substance abuse prevention, and the multiple pillars that go into substance abuse prevention. Community support is one of these critical pillars. In your packet also, you'll see the survey that went out in 2012, how many households in Wheat Ridge and within a half mile would more likely visit Wheat Ridge bars and restaurants if patios were smoke-free. The same thing goes for outdoor parks and playgrounds. Wheat Ridge, we've been working so hard, and you've been working so hard, and community has been working so hard, and is gaining great success as becoming a destination for families and healthy living by the creation of beautiful parks, social events centered around cycling, walking, and yoga, the Criterium, the rec center programming, homesteading, and health-centered development such as Sprouts and Natural Grocers. A smoke-free and vape-free Wheat Ridge not only complements these achievements, but also helps to keep Wheat Ridge heading in the direction with Vision 2025, which Roger went through earlier as well. The proposed ordinance and the upcoming amendments that you will discuss this evening sends the message that the city of Wheat Ridge cares about the health of its youth and community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? We do have another one. Please come forward.
So, my name is Charmaine Britton, and I actually live at 3083 O'Hare Court. I have a student. Better? Okay. My name is Charmaine Britton, and I live at 3083 O'Hare Court. I have a student who will be a sophomore next year at Wheat Ridge High School, and my children have grown up in Wheat Ridge schools. I would encourage you to support this ordinance. Everybody has been so eloquent about talking about how Wheat Ridge is a healthy community, about what we want for our community, what we want our youth to know about healthy living. By making tobacco retail stores smoke and vapor free, we join our neighboring communities of Golden and Edgewater, and we do not want to be on the other side of that, and prevent hookah and vapor lounges from opening. If you might recall, a hookah lounge opened on 38th a few years ago, inviting 16-year-olds to come inside. And 18-year-olds could come into hookah and vapor lounges. Those are seniors in high school. My son will be turning 18 in his senior year on September 1st. I don't want him to be able to go to hookah and vapor lounges. They can also become, they can also conceal marijuana in the vaping devices, and we don't want that to happen. Kids are already doing that. I know that from what my son tells me. Rachel has already also articulated that as well. So as a parent of a high school youth, I know what they face. My son and my daughter talk to me all the time about how everybody does it. We don't want to make it easy for them to do it or set a community norm that it's okay. we can change this with a comprehensive smoke and vapor-free policy. I hope you will support the ordinance before you and consider the following additions or changes. Instead of sidewalks and streets being smoke-free and vapor-free, make it transit waiting areas and city events smoke-free, and increase the smoke-free doorway provision from 15 to 25 feet, similar to those of our neighboring communities. I've been to the Carnation Festival before, and there are kids smoking at it, and what does that message say when that happens? We don't want to allow that. I was at Glendale Fireworks a few weeks ago, and there was somebody vaping there when I was at the fireworks because they don't have an ordinance. So we want Wheat Ridge to be a healthy, vibrant community that people stay and visit, not drive through or come to as a destination for marijuana or vaping places. So please support this.
Thank you. And there was one more.
So my name is Rose, and I work with the city, Rose Fraser, and I work with the city of Wheat Ridge. I work at the rec center as a child care specialist, or recreation aide. And every day we go to Discovery Park, or at least we try to, and something that happens a lot there is people are vaping and smoking, and I'm really concerned because my kiddos, who I love so much, who all attend the camp, are at a very young and impressionable age, and if they see people who are smoking and vaping there, who they think are cool, they're going to want to do that. It's something that we can't avoid, and it's something that we want to take them to Discovery so that they can be active and have fun at Discovery Park, but we're just very concerned about the negative impacts that seeing these things can happen to their beautiful little young minds. So I hope you support this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. I believe that's it for public comment tonight. Let's move on to our items that are on the agenda starting with TLC neighborhood update.
So I'm going to have Division Chief Lawrence give City Council an update on our TLC neighborhoods and progress we've made and outcomes.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Excuse me. Just wanted to give you a quick update on TLC. That's the Traffic Safety, Life Quality, Crime Reduction Neighborhoods program that we've got going now. As you know, we put out flyers to two neighborhoods, the Clear Creek Station and Clearvale neighborhoods. And in those flyers, we invited people to a community meeting. We had pretty good attendance at that, about 50 residents at each meeting. We also had some of you council members attend. I attached some of the comments that we collected from those. I'm not going to go into those, but just so you get an idea of what the neighborhoods were talking about and what they were interested in. We talked about the program and how we were going to come out and assess properties. So we have done those assessments. We did 527 properties in the Clearvale neighborhood. In there, we found 74 violations that we wrote warnings on, and those are quickly being taken care of by the neighborhoods. It looks like we are on that same track of getting about 85% compliance just on a warning. So it's looking pretty good. Same is true at Clear Creek Station. We had just a little fewer properties there, but a little more violations. 481 properties, 98 violations. These violations are the kinds that we see most often: weeds, parking lot problems, fences, broken fences, littering, dumpster screening. The same kinds of things that I think most of you hear complaints about in your districts. We have scheduled the dumpster days for Clearvale and Clear Creek Station. I guess I should back up and say we had a pretty successful dumpster day out at the East Wheat Ridge Neighborhood Project. That went very well. So we have dumpsters scheduled for Clearvale on the 25th, and the exact locations, I've got a flyer that we'll send out to you here in the next couple of days. And Clear Creek Station on August 8th, we've got dumpsters scheduled for that. Just a quick update on the commercial project, that's the east end of 44th Avenue. We have 65 businesses, business properties that were assessed. We found 45 violations. I think if you go by there right now, you see a lot of activity. It looks like folks are really working on those properties. So we're pretty optimistic that this project's going to go really well, and we'll get things all into compliance within the next few months. And then finally, just in review of the program, what I wanted to point out is that to continue to do these kinds of programs, we're going to have to probably assess our resources. What we've noticed is that we are spending quite a bit of time still in the East Wheat Ridge neighborhood, one that we've done a couple of years ago. We do those reassessments on those properties and dumpster days in those neighborhoods. And it's really about as much work as starting a new neighborhood, just that reassessment. So if we continue to do more neighborhoods, which would be the hope, to clean up more areas of the city, bring more areas in compliance, we're kind of we're going to limit our resources at some point. So I just wanted you to be aware of that we'll try and come up with some ideas of how we can address that in the future. And if you have any, we'll certainly be glad to hear what they might be. So I think that about covers it.
Thanks, Jim. And just if council will remember our discussions last year in regards to these projects, is we wanted to do a pilot project, add new neighborhoods. We added some. We did add some full-time, part-time seasonal support. In other words, we kept seasonal employees beyond just that 90 to 120 days and are keeping two on board for the year. So we would hope at the end of this year to be able to come back and give council a report in regards to the overall project, what we saw as strengths, what we see as potential areas of improvement, as well as recommendations in terms of how to move forward. But it's becoming clear in doing this that even with the two part-time employees that we've added to our staff to help us with this, these projects have become so intensive that at some point we may need to look at doing something a little differently, and we're having those discussions internally as police department with community services with the city manager in regards to what steps we might need to take to move forward. And I anticipate we'll bring those to you around the end of this year or first of next year.
Thank you. That's quite, that commercial one, what is it? 45 out of 65. That's really high. That's unbelievable. Nice work, guys. Okay, can we move on to item, I don't know, we have the Justice Assistance Grant.
So I'd like to introduce our newest division chief, Dave Pickett. Dave was recently promoted and is taking Joe Cass's position when Joe retired. So Dave is getting an introduction in grants and presentations to council. So.
And so good evening, Mayor, good evening, Council. I would like to take a minute and talk about the 2015 Justice Assistance Grant. The police department periodically becomes eligible for grants from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and in 2015 and 2016 we are eligible for $11,454. At the police department, we use these grants usually for two things in general. First is technology and equipment enhancement or replacement, and the other is for community projects. We would like to use this $11,454 for technology replacement and enhancement. We've got 4 interview rooms in the police department. and we have 2 of those set for audio and visual recording. And unfortunately, that system, which was purchased in 2005, has reached its capacity. Parts are no longer available, and we're having difficulty keeping it going. We'd like to take that a little over $11,000 and combine it with $22,500 from our Fund 17 Asset Forfeiture Fund and outfit all 4 interview rooms with audio and video recording. This is going to assist us in our large investigations as well as everyday investigations, both done through the Detective Bureau and through the Patrol Operations Bureau. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
I noticed in the memo you talked about one of the features or benefits, I guess, depending on the way you look at it, of the recording equipment, in that the officer in the room could shut the recording off. Does that ruin the admissibility of that in court, or does it make a sound so that we can tell, so that the court can tell that it's been shut off?
Well, the good thing about it is, of course, any break in the recording is obvious, but there are numerous times during a regular interview where not only we shouldn't record, but constitutionally we cannot record. Such times as a juvenile discussing their constitutional rights with a parent. Currently, what we have to do if we're going to turn on or off the system is the officer or detective has to leave the room, leaving the suspect alone, go to the equipment room and manipulate the equipment. Now the detective or officer would be able to just shut it off as they left. Then they can stand guard right outside.
Am I correct, though, that the officer wouldn't be in the room anyway if the juvenile is having a discussion with his attorney or a parent?
Right, but so often what would happen is they would begin discussing before we had a chance to turn the system off, and that causes an issue. Plus, anytime we're not in the room interrogating or interviewing, then that system shouldn't be up and running unless the person inside the room has been advised that it's going to stay on.
One more question. In terms of the forfeiture fund, have all of the suspects been found guilty when their possession has been confiscated?
That's the current law, yes.
Any other questions? I note that you have posted it on the website. Have you had any citizen input?
We've had none at this time. Thank you for bringing that up. One of the significant portions of the grant is that we have to post for public comment, and we have to advise the council and mayor.
Okay. And the other thing is the city council has to approve the use of JAG funds, I don't know if it's called JAG, to upgrade. So I need a consensus on that so that we can do that approval. Would that be correct?
Sure.
Do I have anyone that wants to offer a consensus? Mr. DiTullio? Okay, all right, just give me a show of hands then if you are in agreement. That's good enough. So we will get this later at a council meeting.
Yes, we'll bring both items forward at council meeting. So.
Okay, great. Item number 2.
I've got so much on the agenda, I can't keep track of it. So wanted to have a discussion with council on body-worn cameras. I think all of you are aware of the intense public debate that's going on nationally and locally, over issues of public trust, police transparency, and we've certainly seen in Colorado, and we've seen a call nationally by community advocates and elected officials and the media and some law enforcement leaders to promote the use of body-worn cameras. So I wanted to give council a little bit of an overview of body-worn cameras and talk a little bit about their cost. We've actually done a pilot study. We're in the process of doing a pilot study before this national furor of debate over body-worn cameras and police use of force develops. So it'll give us an opportunity to present this to us and ask some direction from you in regards to what you'd like to see us do moving forward. So Commander Lorenz is going to do a little presentation of what these camera systems look like. There's 3 ways to mount body-worn cameras. One is a head-worn device, the other is on a camera, and the third is on the uniform. So some of you may have seen presentations on the news in regards to these, but the eyeglasses, or I'm sorry, the head mount is worn simply around the head. It's like an ear set. The camera's on the side. What's important to note in terms of a camera, in the difference between what a camera sees and what a human sees, is the camera has a really limited scope or field of view. It's like looking through a set of binoculars. When you look through a set of binoculars, you have a field of view there, and so you see a limited area, but you don't see everything that your eyes might see. Nor does a camera pick. Are you recording me? Does a camera pick up the cues or some of the things that an officer might see based on their training? So the eyeglasses and the head mount present some challenges. They certainly pick up a piece or a part of what an officer sees, but they don't pick up the full view of what occurs there. Then the other way to wear the system is to wear the camera. So in both of the previous modes and models of this, the actual camera and recording device, this is both a camera and a recording device, are attached to the uniform. So in our pilot project, most of the officers wore the camera, at a chest level, and both the sunglasses mount and the head mount present some safety challenges for officers if they wear those there, and they certainly can be grabbed or knocked off. So all 6 of our officers in the pilot program have chosen to wear the cameras as a chest-mounted camera. So that has a propensity to pick up most of what an officer does, but there are even some challenges with that particular system, because if an officer has to draw his weapon and pulls their weapon out in front of them, you get a blockage of the camera view and what's recorded in regards to that. Now these cameras download to a smartphone. So the iPhones that the officers carry, we can actually download what's on there to a camera, and then the officer has the capability then of uploading that either to an internal server or to a cloud-based system, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. So a year ago, in 2014, when we started this project, there were really 2 camera options that were on the market. First was the TASER Axon. That's the system that we've shown you here. The other was the VView. This system here provides you with a pretty good 2-dimensional look in regards to recording. The VView is more of sort of looking at a scene as if you look through a fishbowl. So it gives you a little wider perspective, but it can be at times a distorted view. So we've used this for just about a year and a half now. We had some pretty good initial results with this. Before we deployed those, we came up with a system to provide our officers with some training. We did some policy development based on some best practices recommended by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. and the Police Executive Research Forum. One of the challenges with the policy development, particularly from the perspective of constitutional Fourth Amendment issues in terms of when to have your camera on and when to have it off, presents some challenges. There's not clear case law in regard to guide us specifically in that, but certainly some pretty strong recommendations from those two groups, as well as the ACLU, which is supportive of equipping officers with body cameras with some restrictions. So privacy issues are certainly one of the concerns. The other concerns, quite frankly, are the core issues, the Colorado Open Records Act issues, because these recordings certainly would be available to the public to come in and make a request. In fact, in Washington State, I believe, there's an individual up there who's made a statewide request for all police video, and it's caused a lot of the law enforcement agencies there to deny that based on privacy concerns. So some of the privacy concerns might involve situations that involve a sex assault, where you have a victim of a sex assault that officers contact, and that victim may be partially clothed, may not be clothed at all, may be in a real emotional state. Should we have our cameras on or not? So we've allowed some room in our policy to give officers discretion. There are certainly community advocates out there that want these cameras on all the time to record all police use. We did, right before this pilot project, did a pilot project with the DA's office using portable recording devices to record interviews with domestic violence victims. There were a number of national studies that showed if you could get victims of domestic violence statements recorded, that if they later recanted or didn't show up in court, that evidence could be used in those particular cases. So that proved to be very, very helpful, but there were cases where a victim said she didn't want to be recorded and we didn't record them. So we're trying to, in our policy, give our officers some latitude in regard, from a discretion perspective, of when to do this and when not to do this. The recordings that we have a retention schedule. We've developed a retention schedule around those contacts that haven't resulted in a citation being issued or an arrest made or aren't part of a case report are kept for 90 days and then destroyed. Meets CORA standards. The other records that we have that are related to citations or case reports are going to be kept as long as CORA requires those cases to be kept. We've had some pretty good results with our cameras in resolving citizen complaints where a citizen alleges an officer has been rude or discourteous. There was an agency in California, the Rialto Police Department, that did a year-long study using body cameras. They reduced their citizen complaints by about 60%, citizen complaints and use of force complaints. But there haven't been a lot of studies done yet from an academic perspective on what cameras can or can't do. So there are certainly some upsides to cameras, evidence collection, reduction of complaints, reduction of lawsuits, in particularly frivolous lawsuits. There are some training uptakes on this. We had one of those involving a contact on the street. It involved a justified use of force. However, the events leading up to that gave us an opportunity to do some training with our officers in regards to handling citizens who are agitated and verbally abusive. So from that perspective, we've been able to do some training when we become aware of incidents that don't rise necessarily to the level of misconduct. I certainly think that they could be used in those situations if somebody was out there doing things intentionally wrong. But it did give us an opportunity to do some retraining in the department on First Amendment issues. And so we saw a benefit with that from a future risk management perspective. So in our study, we came to the conclusion, and the recommendation that was made is that we purchase 60 of these cameras. We have 72 sworn officers, so the chief wouldn't have one of these, so you wouldn't have to worry about me recording you. But we have about 60 officers, from patrol officers, detectives, our crime and traffic team, our school SROs, who would all be equipped, could be equipped with these cameras. The costs are pretty significant, and in terms of both the initial costs to equip officers with these, and then the annual maintenance fees that go with these. We're recommending the potential of purchasing 60 cameras, 10 docking cradles. So the docking cradles recharge these devices, and also can be used as well to download these devices to a server or to a cloud-based system. Our IT staff right now is pretty minimally staffed to take on a project of this scope. So our recommendation right now is to go to the cloud-based system. If we were to sign with TASER, Axon, or to VIEVU, they generally have 5-year contract requirements. So our the initial cost for the total for the first year for the cameras, the docking cradles, an assurance plan, which is a replacement plan for these, and the licenses to use the cloud-based service, and the premium service plan are $112,930. That's the first year cost. And then for the remaining 4 years of the contract, we'd pay $56,880 annually for the storage costs and evidence licenses for those. So the 5-year total cost price would be just under $350,000 for the cameras. So the other thing that we've identified, and probably the more critical piece of this, is there starts to be, as you go through the process of using these cameras, a lot of data that is gathered and stored. And we've identified the need for full-time records management specialists to help us manage all of the data that we'll be gathering to ensure that we're complying with core requirements on storage, as well as handling what we anticipate to be a pretty significant request for video, not only from the district attorney's office, municipal courts, but also from citizens in regards to what they would like to see with the cameras. So our initial take and recommendation on this from the chief's perspective is that we await another year and see how some of these constitutional issues with cameras are handled by our courts. There's not a lot of case law that's out there. Certainly a lot of recommendations from law enforcement agencies and legal organizations in regards to these, but not a lot of case law that guides these. I don't think the costs are going to go down as we move forward in the future. I can tell you that the technology is changing. We're already starting to see from one company a second generation of these cameras. But I do think that it's a wave of the future. A lot of departments have been using in-dash cameras in patrol cars for many years. Those are pretty expensive as well. But I think, from my perspective, what I've read and what I've heard from other law enforcement leaders and citizen advocates is sort of a desire and a push to go to cameras. Cameras aren't the save-all. They don't give you the entire story. In my memo, I use the NFL analogy. Was it a catch? Was it a fumble? And in an NFL game, they typically have 30 or more cameras that allow you to see a fumble or a catch from many different angles. And even with all those angles, sometimes, the call could go either way. And I certainly think with cameras, they're going to give you certainly a one-dimensional or two-dimensional view of a four-dimensional situation. So we'd really like your guidance in regards to whether we should move forward with this year. If you'd like to include this in the 2016 budget, or if you'd like for us to continue our pilot study and continue to work with the DA's office and other agencies on the constitutional issues and some of the storage issues that are required with body cameras. Thank you.
I have a question from Mr. DiTullio.
Well, I read your recommendation about waiting until 2007. So you're still talking about budgeted in 2016?
No, budgeting in 2017.
Well, I guess what you've described tonight, even though I understand there might be some setbacks on it, I think that it protects the police officer, it protects victims, and it helps protect the perpetrator. I think that, to me, it's a no-brainer with all the police brutality claims that are going on right now across the country, and victims, like you said, it lowers sometimes the complaints on the police department. So me personally, I don't think the cost is really an issue. According to our budget, we had about $700,000 extra from 2014 in the budget. We spent, $1 million. We spent $300,000 on overlay at a recent council meeting extra. So the cost is minimal. I mean, I think we could actually handle that from that $700,000, the additional $56,000. So for me personally, I think from a public safety perspective and a policy issue, I'd like to see it sooner than later, to protect everybody in the arena, the police officer, the victim, and also the perpetrator, because it does give us one more view. And I think as far as the data collection, can you actually schedule these to be used? Could you stagger their use so that you didn't have as much data, or pick the times that you think you may need them the most? I mean, I don't know if that's like when the calls are the highest, like either weekends or nights or whatever, could you maybe have them just on certain shifts that you wouldn't have so much data collection?
You know, you never
Phase
know.
it in.
You never know.
You never know what's going to happen. I know.
You never know what's going to happen. You know, it's not unusual to, you know, on day watch, which is, you know, some people might consider a pretty boring shift, to have some of our most violent, you know, calls. So I think what our citizens would say is, if you know, if you're going to purchase cameras, you get as many of them out there deployed as opposed to taking a staggered approach. And that would be my recommendation if we're going to go in, and I'm comfortable with going in 2016 is we go all in as opposed to partially in.
That would be my recommendation as one member of council.
So the other piece of that too, though, would be is going to be that employee, because we don't have the capacity to you know, to handle all of the discovery requests that are going to come in as well. So there's that additional cost too that I wanted to make sure that we talked about.
So you're saying we would need to add an employee?
Yes, a records management special, yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't that part of the police chief's job?
It could be, I suppose, yeah, if that's what you want your police chief to do.
Don't film you beating me up for that.
No.
Ms. Langworthy?
I remember you mentioning, though, that, you know, at points, camera recording victims can be, because there's no way to, you know, no clear case law yet on when you should and when you shouldn't record. And when you get victims that are getting recorded and becomes part of Cora, you know, we don't need to do something, though, yet either that re-victimizes someone who's already been attacked. I mean, I see value in these, but I also see value in waiting a little bit and letting some other people who are obviously working at this come up with maybe some better policy direction, more clear policy direction nationally, so that we can really be out there and keeping an eye on everyone. Because it is about protecting our police officers, but it is about protecting our citizens too. And I think that sometimes taking a little time and making sure we're fully prepared for what we're going to be bringing onto ourselves is just as prudent as putting it out there in a hurry.
So this is going to be an evolving area. So whether we do it today or we do it later on, we're still going to go through this evolution. So the risk is, you know, if we make a recording that somebody deems is unconstitutional or has created a harm, you know, we may get sued, but we run the risk of getting sued anyway on a lot of things. So I feel pretty comfortable with the policy that we have now and the discretion that we you know, give to our officers. I mean, there are going to be times when they're going to have to make the decision when they're talking to a victim who doesn't want to be recorded to turn the recorder off. There may be other situations where they say, I can't turn the recorder off because of the volatility of the situation and what's going on. And, you know, we'll be doing a lot of training around that. It is the one concern that I have as a chief, but I certainly think we can give our officers some training, policy guidance, and we do a pretty good job of following constitutional law updates in our federal court district and with the state courts and the Supreme Court. So,
Ms. Wooden? I had Ms. Wooden first.
Sorry. A couple questions. First of all, what are other communities in the state of Colorado doing regarding this?
So the Lakewood Police Department is going to have this in their budget for 2016. Certainly it hasn't been approved by their council yet, but they're going to move forward. The city of Arvada is going to hold off their concerns over the technology and the discovery issues. City and County of Denver is moving forward. Body cameras. The Lone Tree Police Department has body cameras. I know that some other police departments are exploring the use of body cameras. There was some state legislation that was introduced this year to create grant funding for body cameras and a system to do that. There is some grant funding that's out there, but it's really limited. So we explored the possibility of that, but without having a decision from council, we ran out of the time frame to submit a grant. So I think you're going to see more and more departments moving towards this, but the initial push by the larger departments, some of the surrounding departments by us is sort of a mixed bag right now.
So it's kind of half and half, maybe?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Might be
And then
fair.
it says the first year total expense is 112.
Yes.
And then the replacement plan cost in years 2 through 5 would be 350,000.
The total cost, I think.
Total cost.
Yes. Total cost. The total 5-year.
So if we go 5-year, it's 350,000.
Yes.
Including the salary of the.
That does not include the salary
in
for the
addition.
employee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, considering that surrounding communities are kind of hesitating like we are, and that we don't know what some of the laws are going to be regarding this, I would be leaning towards waiting and seeing what's going to happen.
Thank you. Mr. Urban?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In your opening remarks, you mentioned something regarding the safety challenges for officers related to the wearing or the use of these in the field. What kind of research has been done or considerations made for the safety of the officers in wearing these apparatus and using them in the field? Has there been any safety concerns you guys have witnessed or concerns voiced by other departments?
I think the safety concerns are with the head-mounted systems. If they're struck, somebody hits an officer, in the head with an object or a fist, wearing that, the force of that plus the camera, is going to cause risk of injury, bruising, cuts, those kinds of things. The same with the eyeglass apparatus. Now, some officers like wearing them there. We haven't made a determination in regards to a requirement of where you wear those. When you wear that headset out there on a 95-degree day, when you're out there working, it's a bit uncomfortable. The center mount position is, on the chest is the preferred position, and is the one that we're allowing our officers to use. And there's some limitations with that, just like there is with the head mount system and the other system. A lot of the information on this from a safety perspective, was information that was obtained in our study, in terms of officers' comments in regards to their concerns for safety. And the city of Arvada also did a pretty extensive study. We did a joint presentation to the law enforcement CEOs in the 17th Judicial District and the 1st Judicial District on the cameras. So we were ahead of the curve in comparison with a lot of departments. So the safety issue is really sort of an officer felt safety issue. There's not a lot of studies that have been done on these yet, so we don't have any indication of what the injury rate is, because departments are just going to body cameras within the last 2 years as a result of what you're seeing nationally and locally.
And as far as the officers that have participated in this program here, what has been their sentiment or their desire to continue to make use of these or discontinue the use of these?
The 6 officers that have been assigned the cameras love them.
Okay.
They really like having that the evidence collection storage. Now I do have one officer who didn't love it as much for a while because of a situation, but that risk management piece that these offer is pretty beneficial to the city. I mean, if it gives us an opportunity to do some training, if we identify somebody that's not following the right policies and procedures of case law. It's not about beating them up or hanging them. It's really about doing the retraining that's necessary to make sure that we're doing our jobs as guardians in our community.
Sure. I'd be in favor of postponing this to better understand some of the concerns that are in place, especially regarding the constitutional issues, and also just knowing that the cost of these types of technologies will inevitably go down versus going up, and then also trying to understand better the storage costs and how that is handled and what type of records management needs to be put in place so we're not wasting our resources in a way that would be better suited to sort of wait and see what comes down the road, especially with respect to different grants, because we're not going to go back and get a grant for some money we already spent. So I'd like to hold off and see what comes through those avenues.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Just in general, I'm very supportive of body cameras, but I'd like to know what your thinking is. You quoted, or you're proposing here 60 cameras, and I'm wondering, that's one for every sworn officer, isn't that right?
Well, we have 72 sworn officers, so it's one for every operational officer that's out there, so patrol officer, SRO, detective, and supervisors.
So what is your thinking about the possibility of just buying enough cameras for on-duty officers?
So the challenge, that's a great question, and I wish that I covered that. The challenge with these is the download times that it takes to download the video, as well as the recharging of the batteries. So there's what we've found, and what other organizations have found, is issuing these cameras to individual officers. They take better care of the camera. You have a full 14 hours between the end of one shift and the next for those cameras to completely download all of their information to the server or the cloud, as well as the recharging capacity. You only have about 4 hours of recording capacity on these cameras in total, so it's challenged. So it was initially my thought is we could buy enough to cycle through our different shifts, but the downloading capacity of these and then the recharging capacity really sort of limits us on that.
Mr. Fitzgerald, were you done?
One more short question. Is the cost of the cloud storage in this proposal?
Yeah, it's the $56,000 that includes the cloud storage and then also the assurance plan coverage.
Mr. Starker.
Thank you for the report, Chief. Interesting. What other types of, recording or either video or audio do we currently have in the city? And I'm thinking, do you have dash cameras in your vehicles? And talk a little bit about cameras mounted at intersections on traffic signals or lights. Do we have any of those in the city?
So I can touch on a couple of those. The cameras that we currently deploy, we have no in-dash camera systems in our cars. Those are pretty expensive systems, a lot more expensive than per camera, per vehicle than the body cameras. So we don't have any of those. We have the recording in our 2 interview rooms that we use in investigations that we spoke to you earlier about tonight. We have that capability. This building and our rec center has some camera-mounted systems that we have access to video from that, but they're not monitored full-time, and so their use is, sometimes we can use them, they're good quality, sometimes they're not. In terms of that, we do have some cameras in some of our intersections. I couldn't tell you which ones specifically we have those. Those are generally done in a partnership with CDOT, and those are used by Public Works. And they have access to some of those intersections. And then we have a automobile license plate reader in one of our vehicles that we can use to run license plates for stolen vehicles and warrants and those kinds of things. And that's been a pretty productive piece of equipment as well.
Did I hear you say that the operable time for these cameras was about 4 hours?
The recording time, the total recording capacity.
Total recording time.
Yes. So what happens is, do you have the camera? Oh, you've got it mounted. So when an officer goes, this camera is on a 30-second loop. So every 30 seconds, it's going through a re-loop unless I activate it. So if I do a traffic stop and I stop you, as an officer, I'd push this button and it would do an automatic recording until I turned it off. And then if I issued a citation, then I could upload that video into the cloud and then have access to it, for a pending court case. And the same with an arrest situation and those kinds of things. But otherwise, it's in a 30-second loop all of the time. So it's constantly re-recording over that same.
And you can upload that in the field, or do you need to return to headquarters?
Nope, I can upload it to a cell phone.
Okay.
View the video, and then I can use this phone or the docking cradle to upload that video to the cloud and have it there, assign it a CR number so that we can track it, and assign it a title, so I can say traffic citation 26th and Kipling, and put a CR case report number to that as well.
The equipment that you're looking at, is this sort of a first generation or a second generation style of equipment, and where do you think the technology is going? It seems to me that this doubles every 6 months or something like that.
So this is a second generation of these cameras. I suspect a third generation will come out. It seems about every 3 years you start to see these companies come out with a different generation. I heard a technology expert say that the size of a device that you use that has a computer chip in it reduces by a half every 4 years because the technology that's out there continues to improve and increase, and it reduces the size of a camera. I mean, I envision one day we'll have a device on that officers will be able to carry that'll be a camera. It'll be a license plate reader. It'll be a traffic radar reader. It'll have infrared capacity to it. I mean, the technology is changing, and that, quite frankly, Patrick and I talk about it quite a bit, is the challenge in law enforcement today, because the technology is just, it's new and it's constantly evolving. So, 3 years, you're going to see a whole different system that's out there. And that's the benefit of the protection and the assurance plan is it gives you the ability to replace that equipment, so you don't have that as constant of a major.
So then we would not, would we think about it more in terms of leasing, bless you, leasing this equipment?
Oh, you purchase it.
You purchase it, but then you've got a replacement plan?
Yes, there's a replacement plan to it. Because the real benefit for VView and TASER is not so much in the equipment. They can give that to us pretty much cost free. The real cost in this is the storage piece of this. So one department, Arvada, in the study that they did, now they're a department that's probably 4 times larger, 3-4 times larger than we are, estimates that they would need the ability, if they did this internally, to have the capacity to store over 1 terabit of information a year. So that doesn't look too bad in year 1, but you start going year 2, year 3, year 4, that's a lot of information that you're trying to keep and store and maintain. And we certainly would view this from the perspective that it would impact our IT department if we tried to do it ourselves.
And I hope the ability to overcome if you were drawing your weapon and not interfere with the camera, I hope you wouldn't think about shooting from the hip. Thank you.
We try never to shoot from the hip, but occasionally it works.
A little shooting humor there. George.
Thank you. Just to a clarification, so then the first year expenses are the 113, which is inclusive of the recording and storage costs, I think?
Yes.
If I see that right, and then 39 not including the benefits for the FTE?
The total, I just calculated, the total annual after the first year would be about 176,000. That includes the staffing and the 350,000 for over a 5-year period.
Okay. And you'd obviously, the FTE would need to be put in place pretty much concurrently to receiving all of these and trying to deploy them.
That would be our recommendation.
Yeah. And then this is perhaps not a technical question. I'm not sure that it'll even come out right, but just as you were kind of describing the kind of recording and the uploading or downloading or whichever kind of direction it's going in to the iPhone and then back here. So are there any kind of chain of custody issues with the evidence? I mean, it seems like if you're, I mean, and is that one of these issues that are still out there to be solved or not?
Now, from a chain of custody perspective, timestamps.
Okay.
You get a date and a timestamp, and you have the recording, the information there. So we don't think it's going to present much of an issue. It hasn't in other departments. We've talked to our district attorney's office about it, so I feel pretty comfortable with that direction.
Okay, we have a question before us. Did you have something you wanted to say, Mr. DiTullio?
Based on the answers I've heard, if Denver's doing this and Lakewood in 2016, correct, Chief?
Yes, it's been put in their budget as a proposal.
And they're our neighbors, and I'm sure they looked at the constitutionality of this, and they got a lot more lawyers and attorneys than we do. And the fact, like what Mr. Starkard mentioned on his questions, we don't have a lot of dash cameras. We don't have a lot of cameras in general to fall back on for data and evidence. I think we got to get back to the cost here of this is really for public safety, for everybody's safety. And I think that waiting a year just delays that ability as a city to protect our citizens, to protect our officers. And the cost, I don't think is that inhibitive when you throw in the staff person. So I would still fully support moving for 2016 because all the data shows here that there's, to me, no downside. You've mentioned costs have gone down on some, and complaints have gone down in some situations. We have two neighbors, which were the two highest, potentially the highest crime neighbors, Denver and Lakewood, going with it. And I think that, to me, it makes more sense to go sooner than later because I'm sure they've looked at a lot of these constitutional issues. And I just don't want us to be in a situation where our officers or a victim or a perpetrator is being accused of something and we don't have any visual data. If we don't have dash cams and we don't have a lot of intersection cameras and other types of modern technology, I think we really should look at this for 2016.
Mr. Pond.
I kind of see it in between both of these things. I see and agree with some of the hesitancy related to precedent and technology and how these things get deployed and making sure that we're doing it right and to be cautious at that. I see that. And I actually agree that it makes sense, especially with some of the neighboring communities, that it makes sense to stay proactive about it. I guess to punt and I mean this in the best way, it seems like this is a reasonable thing to bring forward in a 2016 budget proposal at $176,000, and for us to be able to, continue to look through it as we go through the rest of this year and be able to make a decision at budget time or.
About $300,000 for the first year.
Was that?
176 is the annual.
Is the.
Then the initial first year is 112 to buy the equipment.
Can we get is that absolutely the way? I guess I wasn't reading it that way because it said years 2 through 5 were some of the additional costs. I see year 1.
So the first year costs, for the system are for the equipment and the protection plan and the cloud-based server is $112,930. That doesn't include the cost for an employee.
Right.
So
which is $39 without fringe.
39 without fringe.
Or the storage.
No.
No, storage is
in the first
So
year.
my point is that it could
Okay.
be presented in 2016 at
150 then.
150 with and then fringe, so it's going to be 100 and whatever. Anyway, I mean,
agree with that. Yeah.
It can be brought forward. It gives us another chance to discuss it. Perhaps it gives a chance if there's any other questions or anything that needs to be resolved.
I'd back that consensus.
So what I'm hearing from you, George, is that consider it for our decision tonight would be to consider it for the 2016 budget, but we would review it again when we look at the budget. Ms. Langworthy?
I just have one small quick question then. I mean, we're talking a fairly large sum of money, and I think we're all aware that our budgets are not, we've had some extra money, and that's great, but that's not a guarantee. Is this the service contract a firm commitment, or if something happens and we just really can't afford it, can we back out?
It's a 5-year contract.
No matter what?
Well, as I suppose an attorney would tell you, you can always argue
Always
backing out of
far.
a contract.
I think that's an important thing to be aware of,
I
too.
think your point is well taken. If the commitment is to move forward on this, then that's the commitment to move forward, for all the reasons you've all discussed in regards to that public trust. transparency issue. Division Chief Lawrence did want to touch on an issue that I didn't articulate as well, and it's the privacy issue, so I'm going to let him touch on it.
So, not to necessarily change your mind on anything, I just wanted to make a clarification between the constitutionality, which is not really in question. We understand what's constitutional and what isn't. I think the question is, what is the privacy issue? So that if I'm an officer and I come to your house to take a report, I film the inside of your house, and somebody decides they want to get video of your house, and through a public records request, they could get that. And that's one of the things that the chief talked about, is this guy in Washington State that had requested all of this video, a wide variety of different things, and then put it on YouTube. And it is available on YouTube for anybody to see, because he got it, and once he got it, he can do anything he wants with it. He could sell it, he could, I mean, there are provisions against a pecuniary gain, but it's still out there. So that, and you know, if a victim of a crime or somebody that wants to have a report taken anonymously, those things are really not.
Can you tell?
Those things aren't really answered yet.
If you walked into our house and taken a report, can that person say, please turn off your camera, or do you turn it off automatically? I mean,
well, and that gets into the policy that the department develops, is because you tell me to turn it off, does that mean I have to? If I'm going to get into a confrontation with somebody and they say, please turn off your camera, am I going to do that? Probably not. I mean, for my protection, I want to record, you know, everything that's going on. And if I do turn it off, then there's going to be a question of, why did the officer turn that off? Well, he's trying to hide something. So I think the policy is that everything gets recorded, and then we sort it out later. But then once it's recorded, how do you sort it out? So there's just a lot of questions that come about as a result of the whole thing.
I still support Mr. Pond's consent, or suggestion that we put it in the budget and then further discuss it during in October.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
Are you aware of any privacy issues that have come to court in our neighbors, among our neighbors?
I am not aware of any in particular. It's certainly being discussed at a national and local level in regards to those privacy concerns. We've had discussions with the district attorney's office on those as well. Our policy is not as strictly, or is not as strict as some of the national recommendations that you record everything. We're giving our officers some latitude and discretion in terms of that. So if they walk into a situation, they're taking a burglary report at your house, and you say, I really don't want that on, we may turn it off. Now, if you're, you know, really acting confrontational, as Jim spoke about, we'll probably leave it on. So, you know, there are going to be some challenges around that we're going to have to work through, and that was one of the reasons that we, you know, wanted to delay this for a year.
Mr. Starker.
I'm gonna weigh down on the side of waiting for a year. I think it would be helpful for us to see how the technology develops over the next year. But more than that, I think we're going to see some litigation and court reaction to how these are implemented. And I think it's a good report what we have, but I would also like to be able to see an analysis or a draft of what the operational provisions are, so that we can sort of understand the First Amendment rights and the privacy issues married with the benefits to our citizens and to our police officers. But and I also think we're not really signing up, it doesn't sound to me like, for a one-year commitment. I think we're going in, you know, we're going in for about $500,000 or $600,000 or more over the next 5 years. You know, I think we will have a better program if we defer.
Okay, any other comments? Mr. Pond, were you indicating such? No?
I mean, I don't, you know, I'm not going to fight hard against that. I think I guess my point is, regardless of anything, it also is a budget issue. So regardless, we need to be considering it in budget time, at budget time, whether it's this year or in a following cycle. That's one aspect of this is budgetary. And yes, it's a 5-year budget concept, and you have to understand that. I agree. So, I guess, I understand the caution. So.
Okay, I seem to have heard it more of going with the chief's recommendation, which was to wait in 2017, but I'll be glad to take a consensus vote. Let's say all in favor of going forward in 2016, please raise your hands. And opposed, so therefore it sounds like we will wait until 2017 as suggested.
So we'll continue with our pilot program, and we'll look at bringing this back sometime next summer during the budget cycle and see if we have any additional information to share.
Thank you, Chief. Great report. Now we go on to our item number 3, which is the smoking ordinance revision.
Correct. Thank you, Mayor. What is in front of you this evening is an attempt to update the city's current code. Did we lose the council member? No.
Mr. DiTullio has left, or?
Is he coming back, or do we need a break?
He said he had another meeting.
Oh, okay. So the issue in front of you this evening is the city's current code as it relates to smoking in public places is not up to date, does not adhere to the Clean Air Act, and we brought this forward to City Council a couple months ago just as a staff report. We did receive direction to bring back a draft ordinance to at least at minimum address that discrepancy with the Colorado Clean Air Act. And then there was also a little bit of discussion about also looking at why we're looking at this, look at the use of vape pens, and then also I think smoking in other public places. So the current draft ordinance you have in front of you, staff worked with our city attorney's office. The current ordinance would get our code up to date, and it would also address the use of using vape pens for a smoking device for different types of product. It does not address any other types of issues in smoking in public places and such, and those can be discussed this evening if you'd like. So maybe I'll turn it over to the chief, and he worked, I think, a little more closely with Carmen Beery, our attorney, on this. I thought they were coming this evening to help us discuss, but I think the chief and I can handle this, so I'll let the chief speak to anything that he'd like to.
So over my 10 years as police chief, the issue of smoking, the Colorado Clean Indoor Air Act, and the issue of smoking in public places has been brought before council on a couple of occasions. In both of those occasions, in 2006 and then in 2010 again, we tried to update the current code, which does not align with the Colorado Clean Indoor Air Act, and also address some issues that we were having with the use of tobacco and smoking by teenagers around Wheat Ridge High School. In about 2005, they had closed their smoking pit that was on campus over there, so we had issues with teens, high school students smoking in the surrounding neighborhoods, and now it's an issue in both Discovery Park and Crown Hill Park. In both of those occasions, in 2006, 2010, ordinances were revised and amended, I should say, brought before council, and at the end of the day, there wasn't enough political support to change any of that. Where that's in particular has been a challenge for the police department has been when we deal with issues, most recently Three Kings Dab Supply. There was smoking of marijuana that was going on in a business, which is not was not something that was allowed by their license, but we couldn't use our municipal court ordinance to cite them. We had to cite them into county court, which caused a bifurcation of the case because you had this licensing issue in terms of how they were using their business license, and you also had this other issue with the smoking that was going on indoors. So we had to cite some people into county court, we had to cite some into city court, and so it really hampered our abilities because we had to be really thoughtful and strategic about who we cited and where they went and how we tracked all of that. So it would be helpful if there's council support to amend the ordinance so we align our ordinance with Colorado Clean Indoor Air Act. Now, the other issues that have been brought before us, and I think the citizens under Citizen Right to Speak have spoken to some of those issues, has been the issue of smoking in public places. So open spaces and parks in particular seem to be I shouldn't say seem to be our community concern. We certainly have heard a lot of community feedback that they would like to see more done. Currently, we have a park regulation, which there are about 15 regulations that are under that ordinance that define behavior that's not allowed in city parks, but we don't cite the specific behavior, we just cite the violation of the park rules. So when that goes to court, the municipal court judge is not hearing a smoking issue, they're really hearing a park rule regulation violation kind of situation. So from a toolbox perspective, if you wanted to address the issue of smoking in open spaces and parks, then that certainly having an ordinance as part of your smoking ordinance that prohibited that would certainly be helpful. The concerns about vape pens and e-cigarettes, this is an evolving and emerging issue. I think some of our speakers tonight spoke to the uncertainty of what the social harm is with these things. I'm certainly not an expert on those, but certainly in talking to my peers in other jurisdictions, seems there's a pretty strong consensus in terms of moving forward to prohibit possession of vape pens and e-cigarettes by those under the age of 18 or 21, it varies, and to outlaw their use in public spaces much as you outlaw the use of regular tobacco products in those. The challenge with those is you're really not quite sure what somebody's smoking. Is it e-juice? Is it tobacco? Is it a nicotine product? Is it hash oil? Is it marijuana? Is it something, some other controlled substance? And you're not able to tell that unless you open it up and there's some evidence of that particular product in there. So I think it's certainly an issue. It's been voiced by our community members and is something for you to consider as well. And then the other issue that's come up recently is the issue of hookah bars. And do you want this ordinance to cover the hookah bars and in the city from a licensing zoning perspective and outlaw those as well. So Ms. Berry met with Sergeant Jepkema. I'm sorry, I should have introduced JD earlier. He is actually my acting commander in investigations right now until we promote a new commander, and he has been attending the Jefferson Department of Health meetings as pertains to marijuana and tobacco, and has also researched some of the ordinance some of the surrounding communities have. So I'll let him weigh in real quickly if he's got anything else to add to what I've added.
Chief, before you turn it over to JD too, I just want to clarify quickly on the hookah bars. We did confirm with Carmen Bury that the current draft of the ordinance would not necessarily exempt hookah bars, so they could apply for the exemption that under the Clean Air Act as a cigar bar type establishment, and so they could be allowed. So if you want to address hookah bars and forbid them in the community, we'd have to do a separate section in this ordinance or a totally separate ordinance, and it would have to go through. It'd be a Chapter 26 change, so it would have to go through the Planning Commission because it's more of a zoning issue. So that it could be done, but just to be clear, the current draft does not currently do that.
So the current draft does not include hookah bars?
Correct.
Okay.
The current draft could allow hookah bars as an exception.
Not the one that we're looking at changing tonight.
the draft in your packet would not exempt hookah bars.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chief. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak here. You've already heard from a number of speakers that have expressed concerns from the community about the hazards and potential drawbacks to allowing public smoking. I can tell you also that our neighbors in Jefferson County feel the same way. Lakewood has a similar ordinance that prohibits smoking in public places and specified public places, as well as the vaping issues, as does Golden, as does Arvada. So does the city of Boulder. They have also expressed the same concerns that you've heard here tonight as well. Part of which, you may have heard some of the disclaimers about vaping, that there's no particular harm or health hazards involved in that. The recent studies aren't so certain of that. There is all kinds of different chemicals involved in vaping that haven't been identified or isolated as being healthy. Other problems involved are that the people that vape stay addicted to nicotine, whether or not they're using tobacco or not. It's the same problem. And it normalizes the use of nicotine. We heard that from some of the speakers as well, that they want to emulate that smoking type of lifestyle. It's just a concern. So that's one of the reasons why we included that piece in this as well.
Questions? Ms. Wooden.
One of my first questions, and I am in support of the amendments, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but concerning our parks, and specifically Discovery Park and some of the concerns that have come up there, the point of putting an ordinance in place would be to make it more enforceable, and this particular ordinance didn't necessarily directly address the penalties. So once this ordinance is in place, what would the penalty how would that work?
So the penalties are addressed in the code of laws. I can't cite you the exact site, but all of the penalties that we have from a Chapter 16 perspective are fines of up to $999 and
year in jail, I think.
And a year in jail.
So it would be monetary fines that we're looking at. So say 16-year-old kids at Discovery Park vaping, we don't know what they're vaping. And I know, and I believe also that some of this is self-regulating, that once the ordinance is in place and people are reminded that they'll self-regulate to a certain extent. But say for some reason a 16-year-old kid says, nope, not going to put it out, and they resist, or they're caught multiple times, we're looking at an increasing number of fines. Is that what you're saying? Like first offense, second offense?
Well, so those would go to the municipal court. So we would issue the citation. So there are a variety of different approaches to this that are used by municipal courts. So much like alcohol violations, a first offense has a relatively small fine associated with it. Court costs may be waived by the judge. But what the judge tries to do in those situations, what the court tries to do, is to get that person into some sort of treatment or education class. So generally it's an education class, and that they've got to go and pay to attend, and it's a 6 to 10 week class that they go to, have to successfully complete that. If that doesn't work, that certainly is an option, but you're probably going to see increasing fines. Generally, at a certain point, if somebody doesn't want to quit smoking and they continue to smoke in public, it's going to be a pretty expensive habit, to have. But that's really the reality. I really don't see anybody going to, to jail over this kind of thing unless they fail to appear, which is a separate kind of charge.
Other questions? Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Our existing ordinance 9-23 section 29 says, without limiting the generality of the foregoing as applied to indoor areas, in order to further reduce the levels of public exposure to environmental smoke, smoking shall not be permitted, and no person shall smoke upon the outdoor areas of any public property within the city, including but not limited to streets, sidewalks, parks, playgrounds, skate parks, pools, green belts, trails, open space, and all other recreation facilities and areas. Given that, why do we keep saying that smoking in parks, for example, is only against regulation? Because this says it's not.
Sir, this is the new proposed ordinance.
So that section B there is the new proposal for what the ordinance would be. I'd like to suggest that we strike the section including but not limited to streets, sidewalks, as that's very restrictive, and strike that and then add some of the other very specific areas. In other words, the public transit waiting areas, community events, and the other things listed here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Can you show me again where,
Yeah, where are you?
describe where that would be?
Page 6, section B at the top of the sheet.
Okay.
So that's section B,
29B.
right. It was explained to me that that 29 above, and then all of these other areas listed previous to that are the state law. And then section B is what we're adding to or changing.
And your suggestion is?
My suggestion is to strike the sentence or the section, including but not limited to streets and sidewalks, take that out, and then add these other areas that are listed on this chart. And as you can see, several of our communities around us have made amendments to their ordinances regarding that. So they would be outdoor seating areas provided by businesses and employers, and that would include, for example, patios at public restaurants, the public transit waiting areas, the tobacco retail stores, and it says here preventing hookah and vapor lounges, but Mr. Goff, that doesn't sound exactly. That hookah lounges would have to be addressed differently. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it would have to be added as a section somehow in the ordinance. So
In the
if you're
ordinance,
adding,
okay.
if you're adding it as an addition, we could make sure. If your intent is to restrict hookah bars, we would make sure it's done correctly. It just have to be added. It's not in there today.
Done within this one ordinance?
Yes, so we could do it within this ordinance, or it could be a separate ordinance. But
Okay.
I think it's easier just doing this one.
Just do one
But then
ordinance.
I think then this full ordinance may have to go through Planning Commission. If you do it separately, just that piece on hookah bars would go through planning because it's a zoning issue, the hookah bar piece,
Oh, really?
is
And
my
then this,
understanding.
according to this chart, the other areas. The community and city events would be, for example, the parade, let's say the Carnation Parade, that during that city event, there would be no public smoking or vaping of any kind.
Do we,
So the ordinance, as it's written in this section B, as I'm reading this, if I'm reading it right, doesn't permit the use of tobacco products on streets, sidewalks, parks, playgrounds, skate parks. So the Carnation Festival would be, or both the parade and the actual event, you couldn't smoke at those events because the section B prohibits that.
Unless we took out the streets and sidewalks, which is pretty restrictive. If we took that out and then defined these separate public areas,
So make it less restrictive.
make it less restrictive and more defining to public transit waiting areas, city and community events, 25 feet from public entrances. And then when you talk about the hookah bar being a separate planning commission, I would suggest and prefer myself that it be separated and that go through planning separately and this ordinance move forward.
So 29B is written very closely to the same standard the city of Arvada has. They probably have one of the most restrictive, Arvada and Golden, in terms of the ordinances that I've read, but this section B reads almost verbatim in terms of how their ordinance is written, in terms of streets and sidewalks and parks,
I
playgrounds.
have Mr. Pond here.
Well, I think I agree with handling the hookah and vapor lounges separately as a Chapter 26 issue. Maybe for, but I have some other questions. In other words, I think that this is kind of a question. I think that we can create a distinction in Chapter 26 about the zoning specifically as it relates to hookah and vapor lounges, and therefore allow a conversation if there's other. For instance, we talk about cigar bars or something like that, whether you thought those were good or bad, I suppose notwithstanding, but the idea that what we're talking about sometimes as a vapor lounge or a hookah is a very specific thing, but these things probably can be handled more specifically and debated and with public input more successfully in Chapter 26. So if I'm correct on that, in terms of procedurally, then I would agree that we should kind of let that happen in that pathway.
And I believe they would still be referenced in here, but they have to be cross-referenced in Chapter 26. So that piece would still go separately.
Right. So I agree with that. A couple of questions that. And I probably won't get through all my questions. I'll just kind of do a couple and then see where it goes. We talk a little bit about the high school, and it's come up in public comment multiple times, but I do want to just ask the question as to Crown Hill being an open space portion of Jefferson County, not the city of Wheat Ridge. How does Jefferson County look at this? We can't obviously create something in our ordinance that's going to bind them in that open space. Is that correct?
No, we cannot. You'll remember in one of the previous presentations by Donna Viverette from the Health Department, there was a open space ranger that talked about what open space was looking at doing in terms of creating an ordinance that they could use to enforce smoking. Now, I've not followed up with them. I'm not sure where they're at with that, but that was something that they were looking at a year or so ago.
And so that would be the county commissioners that would be dealing with that as their part of their business?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any... So I kind of want to understand a little bit of how the business and restaurant bar kind of how different ordinances may have been affecting them. So one, if in some municipalities, if there's a 15-foot rule or a 25-foot rule, but not a rule that's limiting smoking in outdoor seating areas, then is it fair to assume that you could they just have to kind of make their outdoor seating area meet the distance restriction?
The struggle is that he's asking if
you
it's
don't
25 feet.
have an outdoor seating
allowance,
I mean, you're not restricting that, right? So, but it has to be away from an entrance. So then that would be essentially the way that businesses would be accommodating outdoor smoking.
And that's the way it happens today. Yeah, they essentially, outdoor smoking areas have to be, in our current ordinance, is 15 feet.
Away from
I think, yeah.
Okay.
And that's based on state Clean Air Act is 15
Clean
feet.
Indoor Act.
But I think
I see what you're saying.
I think the draft that you have in your packet tonight, I think it is 25 feet.
That's at 25 feet.
And that is one thing that can be left up to the municipality, can determine that distance. But we can't have a less restrictive ordinance in place than the Clean Air Act, and we currently do.
Right, so it can't be less than 15, but I'm sorry, can you point out where it is in this
The
that
25
calls
feet.
it out as 25?
Yeah. Let's see.
Section 924, exceptions to smoking restrictions.
It's 15.
Oh, it is 15 still. I thought it went up to, I thought I saw 25. My bad. Maybe that's for something else.
I believe the 25 feet is the proposed, yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to move people who have 15-foot sections, we're going to make them move it 10 feet?
I don't know if that's been decided, but that's certainly a question. Mr. Starker.
I noticed in the prohibited section that we were prohibiting, and this is number 15, 9-23A15, we prohibited in indoor sports arenas. Do we not prohibit it at outdoor sports arenas? Or is that covered somewhere else?
It's probably included under public meeting.
If they're public, we do,
Public meeting
not
places
private.
Okay.
under 923.
What- So that would apply to the Wheat Ridge High School football games?
Yes, but those would probably be in Lakewood's jurisdiction, so we wouldn't have to worry about it.
Okay.
No, if you had a sports activity over at the high school, lacrosse or soccer or any of those kinds of things, yeah, certainly. Yeah.
But so we're relying on the school to prohibit parking on or smoking on school grounds?
No, because the public meeting place
Okay.
would probably be inclusive
Okay.
of those kinds of activities. I mean, we can certainly run that by Carmen and make sure, but that would be my interpretation of that is it's a public meeting place, it's a public activity going on, and
then Miss
it's a public building, so 22 might apply as well.
Okay. And Ms. Wooden brought up the city and community events. And I think city events is pretty understood. I'm not sure how broad community events are. Arguably, community events, anytime two citizens or a citizen and a friend from another area maybe get together, and
Block party.
it could be any and all of that. That to me just seems a little bit more sweeping in an ordinance that I think otherwise is pretty well drafted.
Ms. Langworthy.
Okay, so I would like to say that I think that the ordinance as written, I think if you really read what's being asked and the amendment being passed, gets covered by that, because this was the Arvadas, the section B.
Some of the language.
Some of the language is B, okay. So I attended a outdoor concert in Nevada last week, and at the very beginning of the concert, they made mention of the fact that there was no smoking or vaping allowed at the concert in their park. And that would be considered a city or community event. I think that the language we have here, because most community events will take place on a street, a sidewalk, or park. So if we leave those in there, then it does cover our need to keep smoking off of our streets, our sidewalks, and our parks. Where community events do take place, public transit waiting areas are generally on a sidewalk. The hookah bar is going to be taken care of separately. The outdoor seating area and the 25 foot from public or all entrances are really the only two besides hookah that don't get covered by street, sidewalk, and parks. So I think we could address those two, but I think that to specifically say public transit areas, if it's on a sidewalk, it's included. I would like to at least open up discussion about the outdoor seating areas provided by businesses, employers, because it still ends up being on a sidewalk. So I wonder, does this then apply to them if their outdoor seating area?
It would, if it's on a sidewalk, public sidewalk, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's why that was Jen's comment, I think, on.
I have some language from other cities that might address that for that question. From city events, this is from Lakewood, they have used the language, outdoor locations where people congregate to partake in city events such as blank, say Carnation Festival, or outdoor musical concerts. Is that the language they used? Regarding transit waiting areas, the language used was transit stops, including light rail platforms and bus stops, with or without benches and or shelters. And then the last one that addresses outdoor seating areas of businesses This would include patios at bars, restaurants, and tobacco businesses. Some sample language. Adjacent outdoor area means any covered area, partially covered area, or any area open to the sky adjacent to a place of employment or business that the business provides for its customers, employees, or members. So there's some language that could be considered for those specific areas that then would address the removal of streets and sidewalks.
Ms. Langworthy.
I would not want to take those streets and sidewalks out of that. I don't mind having clarifying language, that helps clarify what we mean by streets and sidewalks. So when we say streets and sidewalks, we're meaning community events, we're meaning bus stops, we're meaning outdoor seating areas. But I think that language covers everything we all want, or most of us want to happen, which is, smoking in public places. And if we add the clarifying language, then that might help people understand more specifically what we mean by that. But I don't know that I would want to take out that.
I understand. Anyone else? Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me just go into this real quick. Let's see here. One of the things that I'd like to try to consider is, as much as we talked about how this is sort of a self-enforcing ordinance, that because of proper signage and whatnot, that's what's going to carry the water and get us to a point where we won't have these sort of annoyances or issues coming up in parks. And one of the things that I've read about as it relates to trying to combat some of the issues that come along with smoking in the park mainly relates to this issue of cigarette butt litter occurring in parks. And one of the tools that's been used to combat that is to provide residents with a very inexpensive pocket ashtray that they can take with them and put cigarette butts in and take with them, take it away. These pocket ashtrays are like 50 cents or $1 at most. And so one of the things I'd like to consider is, as much as we're passing an ordinance to say that there's not any smoking to be allowed in parks or not, but actually take that next step to try to, whether it be through Breathe Easy or through some of these other groups, to do that sort of marketing and outreach to say, as much as we don't want smoking, we also don't want this litter, because in many cases, as we see right now, there's no smoking in Discovery Park. Well, there's thousands upon thousands of cigarette butts there now. So how do we actually combat the issue that's occurring versus just saying no smoking, which is what we're currently doing, and it's not necessarily addressing that sort of tangential issue, or the tangible issue of the cigarette butts on the ground. So that's what I'd like to consider, is if we can include that in some way, whether that be additional funding for these types of groups to do that outreach, but really focus on how can we reduce the number of cigarette butts in Discovery Park.
So you would like to provide these portable ashtrays as part of the ordinance?
It's a very simple, like, little pocket ashtray that costs
I understand.
a nickel or a quarter or whatever.
Okay. Other discussion? Mr. Starker.
On the exceptions in smoking regulations 9.24, private homes, private residences, and private automobiles, well, private homes and private residences, do those include the grounds? So it's the building residence and the grounds that accompany the resident? So it's
The intent is it should.
So it would be legal if
You're out
to
of
go outside in your yard and smoke? Okay.
I think where we're at is, it sounds like pretty much the inclusion of everything that's suggested, but I don't know that we completely agreed on all of the items suggested in to the handout. Ms. Langworthy.
Can we kind of make a consensus, at least on a couple of the things that we seem to have gotten through, and then work on the ones that I don't know that we really have?
Okay.
So I would make a consensus that we take the ordinance as is and add the language that Genevieve Wooden has provided for transit waiting areas and city events as clarifying language.
That was from the Lakewood ordinance.
From the Lakewood ordinance for those two. And then that we bring the tobacco retail store hookah discussion back because as a separate ordinance so that can go through planning commission.
Okay.
Really just leaves us the two kind of more business related, not public spaces questions, the outdoor seating areas provided by business employers, and then the 20 feet from public entrances discussion. I don't think we've really discussed yet, unless I'm wrong.
So your consensus,
For the addition of the two clarifying languages and to bring the hookah back at as a separate.
are we comfortable with that? We understand where we're voting on? Mr. Starker?
But can we not, are you then saying that we would not prohibit tobacco use in tobacco retail stores? Or we would prohibit that in this ordinance?
No, that would be brought back at chapter 26.
Yeah, in this ordinance, it's an exception to the Clean Air Act, and that's what this models. But we could bring back a separate ordinance that speaks specifically to hookahs, or you could address probably all cigar bars, hookahs, smoking retail centers.
I mean, if we're listing places that you cannot smoke, we could, instead of permitting it in retail tobacco businesses, we could prohibit it in retail tobacco businesses.
And again, as I mentioned, I think it would have to be addressed in here too, but then it has to be brought back separately as a zoning question too. So it would be addressed in here. So that piece would have to be amended in this draft ordinance also. Yes. Yeah, whatever you guys decide.
And I guess I'm a little confused about it being permitted in outdoors areas of businesses, except to the extent that the outdoor area is within X feet of an entryway. Does that override the patios on the food service establishment and bars and that sort of thing, or?
So I think, just to be clear on the consensus, that those two things are not inside of the consensus. Those are the two things that we still have to talk about.
Okay, I'm sorry, I probably wasn't even listening.
No.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure, so consensus on adding the two, bringing back the hookah through the planning commission, and that's all I'm making for now, and then we'll continue our discussion on the two that we have not addressed tonight.
Is everybody okay on that?
But we would include prohibiting tobacco in retail stores in this and in chapter 26.
Well,
that's on the table still, I think.
That's on the table.
Okay,
that's
so that's
yes.
three things. Okay.
Yes.
And what about the 25 feet from public entrances?
I just want to make consensus on three things and then talk about the other two, because I think the three we all seem to be agreeing on, and the other two may not be as easily agreed upon.
And can I just make, just to try to gain some understanding, on the tobacco retail stores, whether it's written in specifically in this ordinance draft right now or not, how it came through the planning commission and subsequently, I think, city council for that chapter 26 adjustment would clarify that language once and for all. But the pathway would be to go through the zoning change through planning commission. So whatever it says here right now may or may not end up the exact language depending on what happens at the planning commission and through that public process.
Ms. Wooden?
I just want to throw out for discussion the all-encompassing streets and sidewalks, and that are we meaning, I know we're talking about the public events, but are we meaning that we are now prohibiting someone from leaving their house and walking on the sidewalk to a friend's house and they're smoking a cigarette on the way?
You would be.
Is that what we intend by that? Or do we want to intend the specific areas of, the public seating provided by a business, for example, a patio, the public transit waiting area, and the public community events? So those further define that streets and sidewalks. And I guess I wanted us to discuss, is leaving that in the way it is truly what we mean?
Make sure our intent is correct. I had Langworthy first.
So I still feel comfortable leaving it in. I don't believe if I saw a neighbor walking from a house to another house with a cigarette in their mouth, I would call the cops on them. I mean, if it's just a quick little walk, I think the intention, I don't think I would report it as much as I would report it at the Carnation Festival, or if I was walking down 38th Avenue shopping and I saw someone doing it there. I think that the intent, it just gives us the opportunity, and most people aren't going to report every single time they see a smoker. I mean, what it does is just gives us that ability to protect ourselves if somebody really does feel like in the struggle with it. I mean, there's bus stops by houses. Does that mean we should allow them to leave their house and smoke to the bus stop that we've prohibited?
Mr. Fitzgerald?
I am not okay with outlawing smoking on public sidewalks that are not related to a public event. We start this in section 921, page 2, legislative intent. The council further finds, determines, and declares that a balance should be struck between the health concerns of non-consumers of tobacco and marijuana products and the need to minimize unwarranted governmental intrusion into and regulation of private spheres of conduct. And I think we've sort of gone over that line. I don't think we have balance here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Urban?
I would just say that I would agree that there are specific areas within the city that we would want to exclude smoking from, but on a public sidewalk where there's no one else around, my concern was it may give a police officer a chance to stop somebody who otherwise had no reason to be stopped, or and to the concern about people not calling because someone's smoking. I'm not sure how many people will call and won't call. What is the police officer going to do then if they get a call that says, oh, someone's smoking on Pierce Street? By the time they get there, they're gone. So
So we have fears of overreaching. Anyone else want to comment on that? Ms. Wooden?
I understand what you're saying, Tracy, that you're wanting to be all-inclusive. It does concern me that how that is written. I just wanted to suggest that all-encompassing streets and sidewalks be removed, and then we very specifically define the transit waiting stops, the city events, and then the patios and the outdoor areas of businesses. I would feel more comfortable with that because it's how that is interpreted. Would it leave it open, I guess? And that would be a concern, so that if we very specifically define that, again, I agree that I feel if the ordinance is enacted and that we do know it's a law and there could be a fine, that in these specific public areas, the public will generally follow it, and I just feel safer being more specific as opposed to that particular phrase.
Okay, Ms. Wooden wants to be more specific. Did I see Mr. Pond?
So, well, I don't. I agree that clarifying language to be specific is perhaps useful in this, and I probably see it a little bit like Ms. Langworthy in terms of streets and sidewalks. I mean, like for instance, and I don't know if trails, like where trails comes into this. I mean, that's a confusing thing too. Like for instance, if I was to say, should it be okay then, as we invest all this money in a multi-use trail that's intended for transport of people who are biking and riding to Discovery Park, that is now open for smoking? Well, you know, is it covered by trail or is it covered by sidewalk? I don't know. What is it? So, you know, but if we end up having to enumerate every paved surface, you know, by name that is, you know, that we determined should be smoke-free, it could become exhausting and maybe not to the point. So that's why I kind of like say it's, yes, the blanket is not a very careful tool, but unfortunately, if you take that out, then I'm going to ask, well, then how are we covering the Kipling multi-use trail? Is it because it's a trail in the name of it, and therefore it's covered by this? I don't know.
Well, maybe we need to talk in more general intent terms instead of trying to wordsmith an ordinance. And And I mean, I guess you started that discussion a little bit. What's our intent? Are we intending to stop people from smoking if they're taking a walk on a sidewalk? And so I mean, maybe that's what we need to talk about more general terms.
When you,
and then we'll figure out what the language is with the
okay,
attorneys.
but I mean, you're saying that you can't smoke on any public property. Period.
Basically, yeah.
I mean, that's what you say, including but not limited to, but your opening statement is you can't smoke on public property. So if it's public property owned by the city and
is that your
city
intent?
of Wheat Ridge, then it's illegal to smoke.
Yeah, is that your intent? Is that what council wants? Or something?
I think that's overreaching.
I think that's a little far.
Okay.
Yeah.
How far should we take it? Without trying maybe to wordsmith it, and then we'll come back maybe with some language.
Well, I think when you talk about parks, playgrounds, skate parks, pools, green belts, trails, open space, and all other recreation facilities and areas, public transit waiting areas, outdoor seating areas provided by business and employers, city events. I mean, you've got a pretty comprehensive list there, but I'm not sure that I'm ready to go down if you're smoking a cigarette and you step off your private property onto the sidewalk that you've now become a criminal.
So by that list, you feel as though we have.
I think that's a pretty, we could certainly think about it in
that list is from what was suggested. You're reading from this list.
I'm reading the what we have in B.
Yep.
So can I ask a clarifying question then? Are you're agreeing with Councilmember Wooden and saying to add the specificity of some of these things on the list and take out the generality of the streets and sidewalks inside of this 29B?
Well, and you may have prefaced it with any public property within the city. I would excise that, and then go to the areas where you want to, and I would probably take streets and bridges and sidewalks out of that. And then create the other list of specificity that we have in the model in the draft, and adding the other comments that we've been provided tonight.
Well, so public property is not defined in our list of definitions. So we may be talking semantics in terms of that, but public meetings and public buildings are. So when you talk about this this language, would you include public meetings and public buildings in that as opposed to the term public property?
Yes, I would.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Public property to me is the all-encompassing, either it's private property or it's public property.
So is it possible to kind of rephrase that consensus? You added one thing that I think we still haven't discussed, so I would ask that again not to be included.
Okay, so amend the consensus to stand as presented, striking streets and sidewalks, and adding the specifics of transit waiting areas and city events, and then bringing the. But we haven't. Are we comfortable with outdoor seating areas in that? No, the consensus is just the two for now, and bringing back the hookah for a further discussion and presentation.
Bring back the 25 feet versus 50.
I think we're still going to talk about that now. I just want to get consensus on the ones that we seem to have reached consensus on.
If you're excluding streets and sidewalks, are you also going to excise any public property within the city?
Where is that in this?
That's right above that.
It's right above that.
All right, sorry.
No person shall smoke upon the outdoor areas of any public property within the city.
Would you include?
I'm assuming, all right, so maybe I'm making an assumption, and I know assumptions are wrong, so I'm not going to. So by public property, outdoor areas of any public property, are you meaning like you can't smoke outside of City Hall, you can't smoke outside of the rec center, you can't smoke outside of the Richard Hart Estate? You're not meaning all public property, you're just meaning, so I guess if you could clarify that to mean public buildings instead of public property.
And we could define that, we could have Carmen define
Thank you.
public property so that it would include public buildings and public meetings.
Would that be better?
Yeah, just
Okay.
so that it's not all public property.
Yes.
Oh, no, I'm okay with that.
But is the intent for, at those locations, rec center, outdoor
Yes.
pool, that it's
No.
out, even outside those buildings on the public grounds, there's no smoking?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So now so if we
this-
kind of have a
we need
consensus on that one.
That consensus. Are we comfortable with that one? Okay, good. Now we need to move on to.
Well, we have two more to discuss. Okay. So the outdoor seating areas provided by businesses and employers. I mean, I haven't heard a lot of discussion about that, so that's why I didn't include them, but I guess we need to discuss those. I guess I'm open to opinions.
Do we need a definition of that? Outdoor seating areas provided by business employees, is there any?
It's a request to add it. So it's not part of, so outdoor seating areas provided by businesses and employers and 20 feet, increasing from 15 to 20 feet is an additional request that was not included in this originally, which is why we're discussing it.
15 feet's included.
Well, we're currently at 15, but they want to increase it to 25. Okay.
So what do you want to talk about? The business sitting
Either one.
areas or okay.
Wherever you want to go.
I would rather just leave the distance at 15 feet for bars and lounges and restaurants, just because I think it's just onerous to tell somebody who's just created a smoking area outside his bar that now he has to move it 10 feet. And I don't think it's an imposition on people who don't want to smoke and don't want smoke to just walk in the door, live and let live. Got to have some give and take here. So I'd rather just leave that the same, 15 feet.
As is our current, as we currently have, okay. Other discussion on that?
I guess, I mean, I'm not opposed to increasing it to the 25 feet, but I'm looking at some of our building sizes, and some of our building sizes at 25 foot would move them outside of their business area and into someone else's business area. And then that creates a whole nother problem. So where do you put someone 25 feet away from an entrance that doesn't potentially, especially on 38th Avenue, impede on someone, push the smoking to someone else's business and make it somebody else's problem. So I tend to, on this one matter, agree with the 15 feet, just because I know some of our sizes are just too small to address it fully, but I'm open for opinions.
Anyone else have an opinion on that? Sounds like we don't, so therefore we would not particularly add this, is what we.
We'd leave it as
would leave
drafted.
it as is, as drafted.
It's in the current draft.
Okay.
15 feet.
Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay. And the last item was, Tracy?
Outdoor seating areas provided by businesses and employers. I mean, I thought that outdoor areas were included in a business's overall space. So when you start counting the 15 feet, does that not have to include an outdoor area?
Well, yeah, and the current draft specifically states, I can't find it again, where it says 15 feet.
Section 924.
24, yeah.
6.
Says the outdoor area of any, so this is, the article shall not apply to the outdoor area of any business except to the extent that the outdoor area of any business is within 15 feet of entryway. So I don't know if this recommendation that was given to you, there's no definition on distance. I guess it's just general. Any outdoor seating areas provided by business and employers would not be allowed. So the current draft of the ordinance does not allow it. It can't be. It's got to be 15 feet away.
So say Colorado Plus, they have an outdoor seating area.
Yep.
Their smoking area has to be 15 feet.
From the main entry.
From the main entry, yes. But they're, okay, but patio kind of extends into that 15-foot area.
From an entryway, any entryway.
Any entryway.
Yeah, but at Colorado Plus, they have like about 2 feet or 3 feet of outdoor patio, then they have an entrance, and then they have the rest of their patio. So the 15-foot starts at the door, not at the start.
Well, it would be their front door, it would be their rolling grill out onto the patio, because that's an entrance into the building.
That's true, it is.
That should then be, so the point where the outdoor patio starts should be where the 15-foot mark starts from, not the door. If the
Any entryway.
from any entry, so not just like a main door.
Yeah, sorry, I said main. It's just
Okay.
an entryway.
Okay.
It's the way it's drafted.
Is Colorado Plus's 15-foot feet from there?
I haven't measured it.
I haven't either. I mean, I know where it's at. I know where it's at on their building as I visit them, but I don't know that that's
the
actually
difficult
15.
part with the Clean Air Act, and I think in outdoor seating areas, I think, the police department's not going to go out and measure them.
No.
And if there's complaints, I think that's something that can be addressed, that, hey, they're letting people smoke 5 feet away, but it's a general law, and 15 feet is what was in the state Clean Air Act, and that's what previous council wanted. They didn't want to go any further.
Can we do, can we revisit the 15, or revisit this, but maybe make an education
do you want? What's your
piece?
intent? What do you want? Do you have an
I'd
idea?
like to educate. I'd like to kind of know where we are on this. Are businesses generally following the 15-foot rule? Are they
We don't
not
get many
generally?
complaints, I don't think, do we, Chief?
No, we don't get many complaints, and you bring up a good point. You can't. It would be a mistake to assume the police department's going to be out there enforcing this. This would be a citizen complaint-driven, problem complaint-driven situation. We've got much more serious crime and much more serious issues going on, but it's a tool in the toolbox. The other piece that's important, I think, anytime that you craft new legislation is that you do an outreach program to those that are going to be affected by this. So I could envision an outreach program to business owners, to students, through our connections and our website to get information out to the community about the changes in this ordinance and the realignment with Colorado Clean Indoor Air Act, and then any additions that you want to put in this. But I would strongly suggest that the major effort, if this is adopted and we move forward with it, is going to be education-based, proactive education-based kinds of efforts.
Mr. Bond?
Well, I kind of agree that I think there's some more information from the business community, or at least kind of analyzing it. This is one of those things where this is there's a business issue here, as well as the complexity of the geography, literally, of some of these places. I will say, and not to go backwards, but I will say that the Colorado Plus example is a really interesting one, as you're kind of pushing them towards a sidewalk that is now not listed. So, and as you look at a street, for instance, like 38th, where we're trying to create pedestrian space, et cetera, we would have to kind of understand how that would work, such that you weren't creating a kind of unnecessary conflict. So if what we're trying to do perhaps is to balance, balance the rights either of private businesses or private citizens, as long as that they're not kind of interfering with someone else, we could geographically in some of these tight spaces get into issues that I think this is one that's a little bit trickier and probably warrants some more thought.
The biggest issue that we've had with this 15-foot entryway and the enforcement of the state law, because the state law right now requires that. So if a business is in violation of this, they're in violation of it. It doesn't make a difference if we have a municipal ordinance or not. So there's an education component. It may, if businesses are within this 15 feet, be an issue of education, and hey, this is what the state law says. This is what you need to do, or look at potential strategies to work around that. But the biggest issue we've got with the seating areas is the enclosed seating areas. So, we've got a couple of locations in the city that have outdoor patio areas that are outside of that 15-foot main entry, but there's an entry to that outdoor area, and they allow smoking in those areas. So we've got that issue that we've dealt with on occasion, but also even more concerning has been the issue when they, close those windows or those doors to those areas, and then it's an indoor smoking area. So,
And our current code allows that, even though the Clean Air Act doesn't.
Right. So the Clean Air Act, so we've done a lot of education around that with a couple of those establishments, and I think we've addressed, the violations that exist, but none of those are the locations we're talking along West 38th. So we've done some of that with the Department of Health as well.
Councilman Starker.
We're talking about outdoor seating areas provided by businesses, and on section 29-25A, and this looks like the operable section about an owner or a manager of any place not specifically listed in section 923. So section 923 lists restaurants or places to buy food and bars. When I read this, since they are listed in section 923, this exemption allowing the manager to allow smoking on his patio would not apply.
This is a prohibiting section. So when you're mentioning 925A, 925A is prohibiting, or you're right, or providing.
Well, optional prohibitions. These are optional prohibitions.
Okay.
So this A is going to say that I'm going to use myself because I own a restaurant and bar that has seating outside. I could not allow that to happen because that type of business is listed in section 923, which really 923 deals with indoor quality. But since it's listed there, that would exempt me from being optionally able to allow smoking on my patio. Is that correct?
Actually, that's a optional prohibition that you as a restaurant owner could adopt.
But I couldn't adopt it because it says the owner or manager of any place not specifically listed in 23, but it is listed in 923. So in your introduction to whether it's permissible or not, if it's listed in 923, it's not optional.
Correct. That's correct.
You can't take.
So, but I think when I read 925A, it appears to me that the intent of that would be that unless it was otherwise prohibited by 924, then that person could post signs prohibiting smoking.
But I think it's the indoor-outdoor issue, I think, right? So it's prohibited.
To me, it's if it's listed in 23A doesn't apply.
Well,
but those are indoor.
Those are indoor. So you're
Doesn't say whether it's indoor or outdoor. It just says if it's.
No, in 24 it says outdoor. So in 23 it doesn't say indoor or outdoor. It says food service establishment. 24 specifically says any business, any outdoor area of any business, including a food service establishment, obviously. So in other words, it immediately exempts the outdoor area of a food service establishment as 24-6.
Well, the second, the modifier, including a place otherwise exempted from 924 modifies the sentence above that. But if the first sentence in A, the owner or manager of any place not specifically listed in 923. So if your place is listed in 923, you're a bar or a food service establishment, none of the rest of that paragraph is going to apply to you.
Fair.
I think that's from a drafting standpoint problematic.
Okay, well, we'll talk to legal to make sure this section is looked at again.
I mean, I think is the intent of A to, unless it's specifically prohibited, to allow the business to to prohibit it.
That's the way I understood it.
That's the way I understand it when I read it too. The intent is to allow the manager to prohibit, to go
That's-
beyond.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
I just think you need to take the first, look at the first sentence.
I think we're noting that, right?
Yep, we got it.
I don't know that did we complete the outdoor seating areas provided whether to include that or not?
No.
That's what
Still
we're
talking
working
We're
about.
still working on that one, weren't we? So, and I think what I came up with was that we felt like we needed more information specific to the businesses in our city and the effect that this might have on it. Was that kind of where we were at? So it sounded like when we bring this back, we're not ready to have that.
No,
as
that was
the
back
other.
to the 15 feet issue. This one's
Was still
separate,
on
I
the
think.
15 feet. I
This
thought we
one's
got that
just
one separate.
we did, but this is just general outdoor seating
General- yeah,
areas
that's
provided
where
by
I'm at.
businesses and
But can we include that with that 15 to 25 foot comparison? Because I think they both have the same, I think they're both the same problem.
Yeah.
And I think that before I make a decision on those two, I would like to know, I don't want to harm businesses, but I don't want to harm people. So, the other ones seem very clear cut to me, but these two are ones that I feel like I would benefit from some additional information.
What would you like to bring back?
I would like, I guess I'd like to know on the 15 to 25 foot comparison, is that really going to be an onerous thing? Because, if you look at the ones on, the businesses on 38th, some of those businesses are
I
stacked.
think we go and ask, they're going to say yes.
Yes.
We can do that if you want us to survey our business community with that and get information from our business community, but I assume they're going to say it's going to be onerous to
Well,
change
I
their-
think it is too, but I think that maybe if we can clarify what part of it is onerous. So yes, it's onerous, but why?
It's moving it.
It's moving the distance.
It's the distance.
It's just the distance is too much.
There's no space. It's going to be a cost to move it. It's going
Okay.
So at this point, it sounds like we need to finish this one. It sounds like we're not bringing that back necessarily because we're already looking at the answer.
Well, to back up a little bit, the current draft, current language, which mirrors the Colorado Clean Air Act, is that it has to be 15 feet away from any entryway to a business, and that's what we've been working under the last, I don't know how long,
Last 10 years.
since the Clean Air Act.
Since we fell out of alignment with
Yeah.
with that act, so we use state statute.
Yeah.
So I propose that we just be in accordance with the Colorado law and not increase.
And that's the way the draft is drafted.
Okay.
So that you can have a smoking area 15 feet away from any entryway.
Okay, and then that would be separate from this outdoor adjacent area, correct?
Well,
I-
or it's the same thing. Or
Well,
it's-
outdoor seating of businesses would include patios at bars, restaurants, and tobacco businesses. So adjacent outdoor area means any covered area, partially covered area, or any area open to the sky adjacent to a place of employment or business that the business provides for its customers, employees, and members. And what I was reading it as is the patio issue, whether this patio is fully covered, partially covered, not covered at all. And for example, Colorado Plus. So doors there, then they have their patio area there, and is smoking of a vape or tobacco going to be prohibited in that patio area? And one thing to consider, especially with the vaping, is that, let's say, for example, somebody is vaping something on the patio at your restaurant, and somebody else suspected it was marijuana. At that point, would the manager have to go ask the person, are you publicly smoking marijuana or are you publicly smoking tobacco? By enacting a general ordinance like this, prohibiting it from patio areas, vaping and everything, would give a little bit of freedom to managers to just say, we just don't allow vaping of any kind.
no smoking either on outdoor patios is your intent for this?
Right.
Okay.
It's what I'm trying to say is that if I go to a restaurant, am I going to be able to know that if I go to the patio, it's going to be no smoking?
Okay.
And that would be anything. That would be vaping or anything.
Yeah, I think that's the question, is are we going to prohibit smoking on outdoor patio areas? Or are we going to leave it to the discretion of the business?
That's the question.
That's the question.
And again, right now, the draft allows it as long as it's 15 feet away from an entryway.
Okay.
And if you want to tighten that up a little bit or leave it the way it is.
So my suggestion is we leave it the way it is.
Okay.
And I would agree.
And you would agree?
All right, so in section 6, so it says the exemption, right? Exemption to smoking restrictions is outside area of any business except to the extent that the outdoor area is within 15 feet of an entry. So Bud's establishment has a patio area within 15 feet of an entryway. So then that means Bud's area that's within 15 feet is a non-smoking area, correct?
Yeah, the portion closest to the door, to that entryway,
Is 15, okay.
you know, closest to that is non-smoking, and beyond that, you
Would be
could allow smoking.
Okay.
Or you could, as a business owner, prohibit it.
Could we, I mean, I would be willing to revisit that portion of it, and maybe extend that a little bit, so saying that except to the extent that the outdoor area of any business is within 25 feet of an entryway, that would probably make all patios smoke-free. Yeah. If that's, our intention is to make patios smoke-free, then if we extend that, I mean, is your patio more than 25 feet?
You could probably get out to the fence and get 25 feet from a door, maybe. But, you know, I think the issue is whether we want to prohibit smoking on patios.
Yeah.
That's where we need to,
And I think
you know.
we've heard from a couple that say no. And we're hearing some yeses over here, maybe, I think.
I would say, you know what, I would say I think that we have some really good information. This still has to come to council, and we have two people that are not present to even be part of this discussion. I mean, at the time that we have it on the dais, we can have the discussion, and we can talk about increasing that to 25 feet or increasing it to include outdoor patios, and then vote on it there. I mean,
So do you want to bring it forward the way it is then, the way it's written, and then you'll have that discussion later?
I'd like to include the other two people, because I feel like it's not fair to make.
My intent would not be to make all patios smoke-free. My intent would be to balance the needs of both sides.
And that's what
would be
that's
brought-
what we're at.
yeah.
We'd bring it forward the way it's written, which is still allows, as long as it's 15 feet.
So therefore, I would like to.
Yeah, and if somebody else wants to bring it up, something different, when it comes back, they can at that point. Amendment, or we could bring this back to another study session.
Well, I think we ought to bring it to another study session so we have a full docket here. I think I would go the other way. I think we may be moving in the realm of smoking to where we prohibit it on patios.
So what do you want us to bring back to the next study session? Can you get a consensus on that, Mayor?
Wait, we have consensus, well, actually, we have consensus on the first part, we're good there.
Yeah, it's just this last piece. Do you want us to redraft this so that there's no smoking on outdoor patios allowed for the next study session, or leave it the way it is and then bring it up as a discussion point?
What I would do is to
Or do two different.
bring two different full
Two
versions,
options.
or when you get to that section of the ordinance,
Have a second option.
You have a notation that we're going to, here's if you want to prohibit it on patios, and here's if you don't want to prohibit it on patios.
Does that work for everybody? The hookah's taken care of. This was the last piece, I think. The hookah? I don't think so. That sounded like we got direction on the hookah to bring it forward through planning and separate ordinance.
But we're also going to prohibit it
in here too.
In here too.
Yes. I think so. Are we done? Elected officials matters?
I do. Does anybody else?
Thank you.
Jen does.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief. JD, Dave. JD, Dave. Acting Commander, Deputy Chief. Division. He changes these names monthly, these titles. Can't keep track anymore. Okay.
So the first thing I had is a plaque that was given to me that I forgot to bring tonight, but I will bring it on Monday. It's a plaque given to the city for the donation that we made to the STEM program at Wheat Ridge High School, and it has a picture of the car, and it says, "Thank you to City of Wheat Ridge." So I have that to give to the city that we'll present somewhere. The second item I wanted to talk about was the Wheat Ridge Education Alliance. On page 4 of the newest Gazette, I did write an article, and I explained in the article that we have an ethics statement, bylaws, and school representative guidelines, and this is part of the restructuring of the Wheat Ridge Education Alliance. All of this information will be public and posted on the city website. If any citizen would like to call, email, or meet with me regarding the Wheat Ridge Education Alliance, I'd be happy to do so. My contact information is on the city website. There's another article written on page 6 of the Gazette that has some information about the Wheat Ridge Education Alliance that I would like to clarify. Prior to the July meeting of the Wheat Ridge Education Alliance, I reached out to Mr. Namiach and the other parent representative of our original board, and I offered to meet with them regarding our new structure, and neither of them ever responded to me. In the article, it states that the Alliance spent many hours and dollars of our city attorney time to create bylaws and a code of ethics. I'd like to correct that and say that I personally spent many hours of my own time reviewing 2 organizations of bylaws and ethics statements that were recommended to me to use as a model. One was the Colorado Nonprofit Association guideline, and the other was from the Golden Schools Foundation. I used these documents to form our documents. You can Google the Colorado Nonprofit Association and find their ethics statement and see that ours is very similar. It's almost verbatim. And I did the same with the bylaws. I sent the city attorney 2 emails, which he responded to, and I asked him to clarify and review what I had already written. I called him today and asked him how much time he spent, and he said minimal, maybe 5 to 10 minutes on each email. So the city attorney did not spend hours of his time helping me create these documents. The article states that the bylaws and code of ethics will make our work confidential. That also is not correct. Neither document is structured to make any of the work confidential. It's based off of other ethics statements of other boards of nonprofit organizations. If Mr. Namiach would like to contact me directly and ask about this, I invite him to talk to me. The article states that the new board will have less parent involvement. Actually, the new organization will have more parent involvement. The board itself will have no parent involvement. Instead of only 2 parents, we'll actually have 17 parents. We are looking for a representative from each school. So our whole group, including the board and the school representatives, we will actually have more parent involvement than before. The article states that the parent representatives will meet only 4 times a year. Since this is a new structure to the group, I originally suggested quarterly meetings. However, as I did mention in our meeting, I said that the group could meet more often if they decided to as a group. Hopefully we'll be meeting a first time in September to decide. The article also states that there's a PTA and accountability group also meeting in Wheat Ridge Articulation area. And yes, the Wheat Ridge Education Alliance is going to be a different type of group. The Education Alliance will not be taking policy positions or lobbying for curriculum changes or other school changes or whatever policy changes other groups may want. This group is going to focus on building better communication and forming relationships with our schools, district administration, residents, and the businesses of our city. I actually hope these 2 groups can support and work and assist each other while we have the same goal of supporting Wheat Ridge schools for Wheat Ridge families. I support Mr. Namiach's right to his opinion on how our schools should be run and structured. He and all parents have the right to their opinion of our schools, the board, or anything going on in Jeffco. I wanted to clarify some of the items mentioned in the article. The Wheat Ridge Education Alliance was restructured to clarify our mission and distinguish what this group will be doing versus what other individuals or other community groups would be working on. The Education Alliance will be working on communicating to residents about our schools and work with our schools and the district as partners to assist education in our city. However, our group will not involve policy positions. I'd like to ask parents of our local schools to contact your principals if you'd like to be involved as a school representative. Different groups have different agendas. It's time for us all to move forward and help each other help our schools. Again, if anyone would like to talk to me, my phone number is 303-204-9504. Thank you.
I don't have any.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to do a shout out to the East Side Wheaties. They threw a block party in District 1 on Saturday. Great attendance, great group of folks. They're doing some great work, so thank you very much.
Nothing tonight.
Just wanted to take a moment to recognize the anniversary of the Aurora shooting today and thank the first responders, the police and the fire for that. And then on that note, tomorrow between 11 and 2, there's going to be a procession from Faith Bible Chapel in Arvada through Wheat Ridge, down 44th, up Kipling, and then down 38th to Denver for the firefighter that passed away. And so my thoughts and prayers with his family.
Nothing tonight.
On. No, now it's on. Carnation Festival is coming. Please, we still need to talk about whether we're going to march in the parade or not. And I had a very, very successful coffee with the mayor. A lot of great discussion. Learned some things. Some of the people there wanted to talk about or start some sort of a communications plan. I thought that was a great idea, which was a way the citizens would like to have more dialogue in between elected officials as well as citizens, perhaps get back to some town meetings, district meetings, one-on-one meetings, so that we can have that, so that our citizens want to have some input into having those kind of meetings, whether, a sense that they're a part of the discussions as well as a part of making sure we have the discussions. So we want to kind of follow up on that, which I will. And I think it's time to say goodnight. Oh, clerk.
I could say lots of things about the upcoming election, but I'm just going to say one thing tonight, and that is that the first day to pick up petitions if you want to run for office is August 4th.
And that's it. Good night.